Alright, what's going on everyone? If I sound a little bit sick, it's because I a little bit am, but today we have a new release of Commander decks to look at. This time it is the Fallout batch, and the purpose of this video is to briefly go over the core strategies of each deck so you can decide which deck is best for you. We don't have time to cover all 400 cards across the 4 decks, but I will leave a link to the complete deck list in the description below if you're interested in that. So let's start with Mutant Menace, which has the Wise Mothman as the commander. It's a 4-mana 3/3 flyer that says when it enters or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. So rad counters are like poison counters in that they get placed on players, not on creatures. They force players to mill based on the number of counters they have every turn. And for each non-land milled, they will lose 1 life and 1 rad counter. So it's less lethal than poison most of the time. The Wise Mothman also distributes +1/+1 counters as people mill, which is also very important as this deck has a major +1/+1 counter theme. The alternate commander is the Master Transcendent. It dishes out a couple rad counters when it enters and then can reanimate creatures milled this turn by turning them into 3/3 mutants. So the general idea of this deck is you want to be poisoning everyone with radiation and pumping your mutants with +1/+1 counters. Some new cards that illustrate this include Feral Ghoul, Mirelurk Queen, and Vault 12. The first gets +1 counters when other creatures die, then spits out radiation based on how much power it has. When it dies, the Mirelurk Queen is irradiated and will draw and get counters once per turn when people mill, so when they get irradiated. And the Vault dishes out a bunch of radiation, makes a bunch of zombies, and then puts out a bunch of counters. And this is the general idea of what this deck is doing. Radiation, mill, counters. And this deck is full of this type of stuff. You get like Agent Frank Horrigan, Bloatfly Swarm, Screeching Scorch Beast, lots of things caring about counters, proliferating, milling, lots of stuff like this. Some reprints in the deck that aid this strategy include Branching Evolution, Hardened Scales, and Inexorable Tide, all of which have new Fallout themed art. The first 2 amplify counters and you'll be placing a lot of those, and the Tide will proliferate whenever you cast something, which not only amplifies your +1/+1 counters, but will also allow you to proliferate rad counters on your opponents. And there's plenty more we don't have time to talk about. Bear in mind there are a ton of new cards, so I can't even brush the surface with this video, but there's lots of +1 counters, lots of mutants, even some tribal mutant stuff, and a little bit of proliferation. But basically, if you want to play a board full of monsters and spread radiation, be sure to check out Mutant Menace. Next on our list is Scrappy Survivors with Dogmeat Everloyal as the commander. It's a 3-mana 3/3 that, when it enters, will mill 5 cards. Then you can return an aura or equipment back to your hand. And then whenever something that's enchanted or equipped attacks, you make a junk token. So junk tokens can be sacrificed to exile the top card of your library, and you can play it until end of turn. And that's what this deck is built around, is a junk deck. The alternate commander is Preston Garvey. He generates enchantments that get placed on lands and let you tap them for additional mana. They're settlement tokens. And then when he attacks, he untaps permanents that are enchanted. So that's not only going to include all your creatures with enchantments, but also all these settlements he makes. So this is actually an aura equipment deck that cares about playing low cost artifacts and enchantments so it can easily cast them off the top of the library with junk tokens. So it's filled with things like Bloodforged Battle Axe, Animal Friend, Pip-Boy 3000. All of these are pretty powerful, but they're also low cost. The first makes token copies of itself to ensure you have plenty of equipment. Animal Friend makes tokens and also pumps them up based on how equipped the creature with Animal Friend is. And Pip-Boy is just super efficient, has lots of versatility, and we also get lots of new creatures that care about having lots of auras and equipment, like Gunner Conscript, Mr. Gutsy, and Armory Paladin. The first gets bigger the more stuff you put on it and makes junk when it dies. The robot gets counters when you play auras and equipment and also turns into a pile of junk when it dies. And the Armory Paladin does the same thing junk does, which is to say, it lets you cast stuff off the top of your library. And there is a ton of stuff like this. You get like Codsworth, Duchess, Cass. All of these care about equipment or auras in some way, or help produce junk tokens to find more aura and equipment. In terms of reprints, we get some staples for this archetype, like Pure Steel Paladin, All That Glitters, and Ranker, all with new Fallout themed art. The first draws a ton of cards and makes it easy to equip. All That Glitters can make a single creature huge, and Ranker is another low-cost aura that conveniently constantly comes back if the creature dies, which is very useful in long, grindy games. There's plenty more we don't have time to talk about, lots of equipment, lots of auras, and some more payoffs. But if you want to be playing an aura and equipment deck that, I don't want to say it's a Voltron deck, but it cares about having low cost aura and equipment and then casting a bunch of them with junk tokens, be sure to check out Scrappy Survivors. Next up is the Science deck with Dr. Madison Lee as the commander. It's a 3-mana 2/3 that says when you cast an artifact you get an energy counter, and then she gives you lots of ways to spend that energy. She can pump a creature, she can draw a card, and she can return artifacts from the graveyard straight to the battlefield. The alternate commander is Liberty Prime Recharged, a 5-mana 8/8 with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste that has to be sacrificed when it attacks or blocks unless you can pay 2 energy. It can also sacrifice artifacts to power itself, basically giving you 2 energy and drawing another card. So this is pretty self-explanatory. This deck is an artifact energy deck, and you can choose to either generate energy with Dr. Lee to have lots of versatility, or use your energy to fuel a giant robot with Liberty Prime. So the deck has tons of new ways to make and use energy, like with Synth Eradicator, Sentry Bot, and Behemoth of Vault Zero. The first can generate energy or cast a card off the top of your library when it attacks and can turn energy into damage. The Sentry both has flash and makes a bunch of energy when you're attacked, and then can turn energy into +1/+1 counters for your board. And the Behemoth generates a bunch of energy when it enters, and when it dies, can spend that energy to blow up a non-land permanent. And there is a ton of this. We get Rex Cyberhound, Robo Brain, Warmind, Assaultron, Dominator, so on and so forth. If you like robots that care about energy and spending energy and making energy, there is a ton of it in this deck. Also lots of non-creature cards like Automated Assembly Line, Plasma Caster, and T-45 Power Armor. The first can make an army of robots, the equipment can exile a blocker with some luck, you have to flip a coin, and the armor requires constant energy to keep the creature untapped, but it also adds Menace, Trample, and Lifelink counters, so the longer something stays in the armor, and the more energy you spend to keep it active, the more powerful the creature gets. In terms of reprints, there's a lot of classic artifact payoffs, like Steel Overseer, Panharmonicon, and Mechanized Production. As you may have guessed, with new Fallout themed art, the Overseer puts counters on all your robots, the Panharmonicon doubles enter the battlefield triggers, and as we've seen, a lot of our stuff adds energy when it enters, so it basically doubles that. And the enchantment can create token copies of whatever enchantment it's attached to. And I think you get the idea. There's plenty more we don't have time to talk about. Lots of artifact payoffs and new artifacts and stuff. But basically, if you want to play a Jeskai artifact energy deck, be sure to check out Science. Our final deck is Hail Caesar, a Mardu deck with Caesar, Legion's Emperor as the commander. It's a 4-mana 4/4 that says when you attack, you can sacrifice a creature. If you do, you can choose 2 of the 3 abilities. You can make 2 1/1s that are tapped and attacking, great for sacrificing on future turns. You can draw a card and lose a life, or you can deal damage to an opponent equal to the number of tokens you have. It's a lot of things, but to summarize, this is a Mardu token sacrifice deck. The alternate commander is Mr. House. You can pay for and tap it to roll a dice, and his first ability generates robots whenever you roll. There isn't a lot of synergy with this card as your main commander, but in the 99, he generates tokens for Caesar basically. So basically this is an aggro token deck. So for tokens, we get things like Securitron Squadron, Thrill Kill Disciple, and Wasteland Raider. The key aspect of these cards is the squad mechanic, so you can pay the squad cost any number of times to create that many tokens of the creature when you play it. So the robot will put tokens on all of its copies, as well as all other tokens you make. The disciples need to discard a card, which seems bad, but you are effectively turning dead cards into 3/2s, 1 mana 3/2s even, and they make junk tokens when they die, so they replace themselves eventually. And the raiders can make everyone sacrifice creatures, which this deck also really likes. It likes to put a bunch of tokens out and then make everyone sacrifice. We also get things like Colonel Autumn, Craig Boone, and Paladin Elizabeth Taggarty, which all continue the aggressive token sacrifice theme. The first will let your legends exploit creatures and then gives counters to all your other creatures. Craig Boone gets quest counters when you attack with 2 or more creatures, then deals damage based on the number of quest counters it has. And the Paladin will, when you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card and put a creature onto the battlefield if it costs X or less, where X is how much power she has. So aggression, token aggression, right? That's the idea. Attack, 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 make tokens, make them big, sacrifice them, that sort of thing. Some reprints in this deck include Black Market, Assemble the Legion, and Captain of the Watch, and you won't believe it, but they all have Fallout themed art. Black Market rewards your aggression with mana, and the other 2 are great at generating more tokens for your army. And there's plenty more we don't have time to talk about. There's actually a lot of sacrifice themes, token producers, and things that reward you for being the aggro player. Plenty of stuff also that help you recoup your losses that you incur during combat. Yeah, basically if you want to be the aggressive psychopath, Hail Caesar might be the deck for you. And that's it for our Fallout Commander decks. Be sure to let me know which one you're most interested in, and also check the description for links to the complete deck list, as well as sponsored Amazon affiliate links, which I absolutely discourage you from using if you have a local game store to support. Please do that instead. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope this video was useful, and I will see you in the next one, where I will hopefully finally not be sick. Great.